One of the most terrifying tasks in war is an assault from the open sea. There is no place to hide, nowhere to retreat, no choice but victory. This is the story of the United States Marines who specialized in that task in World War II, island hopping across 7,000 miles of the Pacific, the longest odyssey in all military history. But for those individual Marines who, with quivering stomachs and pounding hearts, took one island after another, there was a verse written by an unknown Marine on Guadalcanal, which would for all time epitomize their true feelings. These were the lines they scribbled on the bows of the landing boats, scrawled on the beaches, etched forever with acid into their hearts. And when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he will tell, "One more Marine reporting, sir. I've served my time in hell."
Hello, I'm Lee Marvin. Whenever I walk along a beach like this, there always comes the moment when I remember other beaches. Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Saipan. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And no Marine who was there can help but remember what it was like there. Our unique adventure was recorded for the first time in warfare on color film or on priceless eyewitness paintings by combat artists. Most of our serene days at sea were spent in preparation for the fiery moments on land. For our first attack, we'd heard that on a remote island called Guadalcanal, the Japanese were building an airfield that could cut seaborne communications between America and Australia. So in those dark days right after Pearl Harbor, the Navy hastily assembled a makeshift invasion fleet and a not yet fully trained division of Marines.
I keep my clock on San Francisco time. The sunset here is tomorrow's. And each night, as the sun goes down, I pray, dear God, give me one more tomorrow. Just one more tomorrow.
Our landing at Guadalcanal completely surprised the enemy. We quickly captured his airfield and his stores of rice and sake. We celebrated, prematurely. That night, the Japanese Navy caught our Navy by surprise. By dawn, 4 of our heavy cruisers were knocked out. Our warships and cargo vessels fled for safety, with most of the supplies that we needed so desperately still in their holds. We Marines were alone, surrounded by overwhelming Japanese air, sea, and land power. Our time in hell had begun. Our enemy was invisible, cleverly concealed in the foliage. Yet round the clock, the Japanese threw something against our thinly held lines.
Suddenly he was there,
fingers as gentle as gauze. Never knew his name. But I'll never forget the Jesus look in his eyes.
On our patrols, we never knew when a sniper's bullet would pick us off. And there were other enemies, malaria, leeches, and the endless wetness that caused a living jungle rot to fester on our skins. Yet we also had friends who would find our wounded and bring them back to our lines.
I like it here. All the variety of things to do, like scrubbing your laundry by hand or boiling it in the garbage can. Variety, suspense, like hanging up your clothes to dry, see how many months it takes. Or counting mosquito bites, see who's got the most per square inch. Or counting the worms in your rice. Worms. That's fresh meat for Marines. I like it here. I like to listen every night to the crooners in the jungle. Japanese drink Marine blood. Blood? Well, I'm from Los Angeles, California. If you're counting in blood for me after what the mosquitoes and the leeches and the dysentery have done, you're gonna die of thirst.
The big Japanese offensive came in mid-October. They opened up with their artillery. Next, their warships joined in. Then one black midnight, thousands of them screaming "Banzai, Banzai" raced in wave after wave against our lines on Bloody Ridge. But in charge of our machine guns there was a sergeant nicknamed Manila John. And Manila John and his crew stuck by their guns and kept firing. In all that night, they fired 26,000 rounds of ammunition. For his actions, John Basilone won the Medal of Honor. And for similar actions, so did Sergeant Mitchell Page, who kept firing his machine guns even though they were so hot that both his arms were burned right up to the elbows. By dawn, the October offensive was smashed. Our enemies were no longer invisible. They had gone to their deaths believing in the samurai code, that the greatest goal in life was to die for one's emperor. And all those who so died would be honored as deities in the shrines of their homeland. In our eyes, their banzai charges were senseless. In their view, these were not corpses, they were gods. And those who we captured, only because they'd been unconscious, they were now lost souls, disgraced, excommunicated from the land of their fathers. But they were human. They had to have some social bonds, some allegiance to someone. Trained to respect authority, they adopted us now as their new fathers. During the entire Pacific War, no Japanese prisoner of war in our custody ever tried to escape. Most vied with each other to give us the fullest details of their troop dispositions and plans. We, their ex-enemies, were now their only friends. By November, replacements and supplies could be brought to us, for our Navy had won supremacy in the waters off of Guadalcanal. Finally, we were relieved. We suffered battle casualties, individual weight losses as high as 45 pounds, and assorted miseries from rain, heat, insects, dysentery, malaria, and a disease that we called the Goonie bird stare, a disorder of thinking and living, or even wanting to live. We'd won. We'd turned the tide of the war in the Pacific. But we'd only begun to serve our time in hell. Now the curtain rose on the most theatrical and terrible tragedy of the Pacific War, which, like all tragedies, would illuminate for one convulsive moment man's incredible inhumanity and nobility. To get to Japan, we'd adopted the strategy of island hopping, and our first major jump was 1,000 miles to an atoll called Tarawa. The only island on the Tarawa Atoll big enough to contain an airfield was Badio, a strip of sand only 2 miles long. Bloody Badio, the world's most heavily fortified island, whose Japanese commander boasted Badio couldn't be taken by 1,000,000 men in 100 years. The dawn came up red over Tarawa, and the old salts whispered the ancient adage of the sea. Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning. Red indeed was to be the color of Tarawa, for the Japanese code permitted no exit but death, and we Marines, as usual, had drawn up no plans for retreat. We did not know that Badio's pillboxes were so layered with coconut logs and concrete, steel and sand, that they were impervious to our naval bombardment. Soon, through tiny gun ports, the invisible enemy began laying down deadly lanes of fire. Of the Marines in the first 3 waves, 70% quickly became casualties, and there was no way of getting all the wounded out. For of the 86 Amtraks that had carried them in, only 15 were now operational. Yet, though disorganized and disabled, individual Marines continued to attack. Alone, Sergeant Bill Bordelon leaped over the seawall and blew up 2 pillboxes. Then a machine gun hit him, but he picked up another charge and flung it at the 3rd pillbox. Then he was hit again, and he died. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. Lieutenant Bill Hawkins, nicknamed the Hawk, and a scout sniper platoon had captured Badio's strategically vital pier. Now the Hawk, who had been rejected as physically unfit by both the Navy and the Air Corps, led his men against pillbox after pillbox. Even when shot in the chest, he refused to be evacuated. Instead, he knocked out 3 more machine gun nests. Then a mortar shell hit him. The Hawk died on the beach at Badio. He, too, won the Medal of Honor. Yet valor became so common on Tarawa that it went unrecognized. But there were too few of us on shore. The outlook was desperate. Worst of all, the tide was lower than expected. The boats of an entire battalion were hung up on the coral reef. While on the beach, a half a mile away, a few hundred fellow Marines desperately needed help. Out on the reef, then, we felt that old Marine Corps feeling. The pride of being tough and the bitterness of always getting the dirty end of the stick. So it was up to us to wade in through 500 yards of open water, straight into the mouths of the enemy guns. Our fellow Marines ashore needed help. And so we waded in, each man often murmuring to himself the old familiar words he had learned in his childhood.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God,